At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game. Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan Maiden.
But what's more impressive to me about the
Case Thornton.
Yeah, I mean, I got him.
Chris Dowhouse.
Get him, Chase. Get him, Chase.
And Adam.
No, not necessarily, but it's again the same.
Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate.
All right. We're back. We're fresh off the expo, ladies and gents. What is that background noise? Someone mute their mic. All right, you guys are killing me. We're back off the expo, and nobody knows anything about what's going on.
Someone's in the backyard.
Someone is in the backyard. That's exactly what that sounds like.
Guilty as charged.
I know there's crickets. I would hope that wasn't our audience.
I'm hearing cicadas in the background, ready to draft and everything. Yeah, so we're fresh off the expo. Happy to be back. Happy to be back on our regularly scheduled time here at 9:30 on Wednesday nights. Make sure you follow Operation Domination on any podcast platform we're available to you, and subscribe to the FF Advice Network on YouTube. This show, many other shows, we got live shows going on pretty much every single night of the week. So we're coming back off the expo. We're coming back off of week one of preseason, and the best thing I thought we could do is start a mock draft. Because, the main drafts are going to be happening this week, the week after, and Labor Day weekend, the week after that. The next 3, weeks of home drafting in particular, but even FFPC and all the other big tournaments, it's all going to be happening over the next 3 weeks as we get into week one. That's right. Week one is only 3 friggin' weeks away. So that's one of the reasons why we got to get prepared today. But we do have 2 very special guests. The moment you've all been waiting for. In the middle of your screen, we have Jono and Nick. Woo!
Yeah, baby.
Let's go.
Let's go.
There we go. Okay, so we got a sleeper mock draft. We got a lot of things to get into. We would be remiss if I did not at least hit a little bit of breaking news. All right, real simple, real quick. So we got some big name injuries that I felt like we at least had to discuss before we jumped into that mock draft. So Jahmyr Gibbs, we're all waiting on that hamstring injury. That news broke down today. Looks like ultimately he will be okay. All right, so it doesn't sound like he's going to miss week one. I just wouldn't expect to see him too much more throughout the preseason. Amber, what is up? Amber's in the draft with us too. JJ McCarthy, he's done for the year. Meniscus tear, surgery, not going to come back, full repair. Probably the best thing for him from a long-term perspective, but Sam Darnold, the Ghostmaster himself, is going to be starting the entirety of the season, barring injury. So we'll get into that in just a second. Jordan Addison on the same team, not believed to have a serious injury, did get carted off today. Wound up being an ankle injury. Sounds like from Kevin O'Connell, he is not expected to miss week one or anything like that. And then we have Matthew Stafford, hamstring today, not considered to be a major thing, more of a precaution that they took him out of today's joint practices. Marquise Brown, we haven't talked about this since the show hit. Most people already know, out the next 4 to 6 weeks with a shoulder injury. I put this out there on social media. I said, hey, look, just draft as if Marquise Marquise Brown's going to miss the first 3 weeks. So, do that as you will. That for me, that puts him in my wide receiver 4 tier. Bumps up Rashee Rice, who looks like his suspension is not going to probably hit until next year because, they don't even have a court case until December. So everything looking like it's shaking out now for the Chiefs going into week 1. Chris, what's the biggest thing on that news list that stands out to you?
Yeah, I think that you're kind of looking at the guys coming back. The Rams situation, they got a banged up offensive line. I know that effort's precautionary, but this offense is, lives and dies by their quarterback. I know Jimmy G was signed, but he's out for the first 4 weeks. We saw what Stetson Bennett can bring to the table 4 interceptions later. So I don't know if we're really excited about what the Rams are going to do with it. We're looking for Puka Nacua to be one of those top-tier receivers. I love Cooper Kupp. Everybody knows that. So you're looking for this offense to kind of be able to feature these receivers and the Kyron Williams or Blake Corum. So that's, to me, one of the things I'm concerned, Dan, is this Rams offense has been banged up all offseason already.
Yeah, the offensive line has been dreadful. Let's get to one of our guests here, Nick. J.J. McCarthy, how does that make you feel about not just Justin Jefferson, but the surrounding Minnesota Viking fantasy relevant players?
Yeah, I think Jefferson drops down a few spots from where we're going to be drafting him. Definitely like Jefferson for a volume play. But if we're talking about season long, we're talking about a guy you're potentially drafting top 8, top 9. I think he slips down to maybe now that 1-2 turn. I like Darnold. I think he can finally have an opportunity to shine because Minnesota's offense definitely predicates the quarterback to get the ball out constantly, and we love that for fantasy. But I think if we can get Jefferson at a discount, I'm all for it. If he's probably getting drafted and selected 5, 6 right now on most and all platforms, still a little high. I still would like to have him at value at like that 9, 10, 11 spot, where we're constantly talking about ranking between receivers. Are we drafting him, A.J. Brown, or Puka Nacua? And whatever happens after that may fall.
Okay. But Jahmyr Gibbs, Johnny, we go to Jahmyr Gibbs. Are you moving him down your list at all?
I was never really in on him like that. Obviously, if you can get him for a value to kind of say I'm in on that right there. But I think that Detroit offense is one football. There's a lot of high end players on their team. There's a lot of guys going early on. So for me, I am moving him down. But it's the same thing. I would say probably as the masses, right? That's where I had him ranked that. So it's not an actual move for me. Monty, he's going to get busy. He's going to do his thing as well, work inside the 20s. And obviously he's got some nice work in the passing game as well. So I just worry about guys that are, built like Gibbs. I feel like maybe down the road he could be Westbrookish but for me right now, I'm looking at guys that are kind of bell cowish.
All right. Well, a nice little breakdown. Those are the major headlines going around the league right now. I'm sure there'll be more every week. We'll get you guys up to date on Wednesday nights at 9:30. Make sure to subscribe again to the Football Advice Network. But let's get this mock draft on the way. We're going to do as many rounds as we possibly can. So everyone buckle up and let's do this thing. And I'm going to start off. I gave everybody 3 minutes, so I don't want to hear complaints about the clock being too fast this
3
time.
minutes? Oh, Lord.
I mean, look, it auto drafts in the computer anyway, so we don't have to wait for the computer to take 3 minutes. I do have a couple extra people in this draft. I wasn't anticipating being in there, though. But Adam's on the clock at number 1. We'll see what he gets to do. Now, again, this is a half-point PPR mock draft, single quarterback league, 3 receivers, 1 flex, 1 tight end, 1 defense, 1 kicker. I doubt we'll get to the part of the draft where we actually get to the defense and kicker. At least I'd be shocked. Anyway, why isn't the computer... Yeah, let's see if you auto pick that. Let's get that out of here. All right, so Adam, he goes with Christian McCaffrey. Why are you going Christian McCaffrey when Bijan Robinson, who's going to be better this year, is on the board, Adam?
Look, I feel like if Christian McCaffrey's out there, then the only way it's a bad pick for me is if Christian McCaffrey gets hurt, because if he's out on the field for the 49ers, then you feel really good about getting him. He has the highest ceiling in fantasy football. It's just, that's the reality of the situation. Until I see a play fall off, which I have no reason to expect is coming. Look, I'm just willing to take the gamble on his health and, know that he's in a very beneficial offense and already was one of the best running backs in football.
That's a bold statement.
No, of course I'm being facetious. Of course I'm being facetious. The bold. Yeah. CMC though. Hey Chase, while you're over there giggling, why don't you make a pick because you're up on the board?
I was giving you guys time to discuss the nuances and the shock of McCaffrey going 1. Bijan going to the computer at 2 just shows you that AI still has a way to go. I'm going to grab the number 1 receiver in fantasy football right now.
Shout out to Dynasty World and Tyler Bradley for joining the stream. Bijan won't be better. It's blasphemy. Tyler, I know you. I see you every show, and that's Tyler Bradley, by the way, our founder here on Fantasy Football Advice Network and our Fantasy Sports Advice Network now, I should say. And he always has this big old Christian McCaffrey jersey on the back of his stream. So bias. I'm a 49ers fan, and I won't even say CMC's number 1. No. All right, so we got CeeDee Lamb. He goes to Chase, number 1 receiver off the board. Chase, are you not concerned by the fact that Jerry Jones is Jerry Jones and this whole negotiation thing all up with CeeDee Lamb still not in camp?
No, because the most likely thing that happens is still that CeeDee Lamb is on the field for week 1 and playing receiver for them, and their offense isn't going to change from last year. If anything, they may have to throw more than last year because we're not necessarily sure if they have a legitimate number 1 running back anymore. So I'm not worried at all about CeeDee Lamb and his volume and his skill set, and I'm not worried about Dak Prescott either.
All right. You look fair enough, okay? We were doing a study, and basically the elite receivers, the wide receiver 1 overall, and usually all the way to the wide receiver 3. The thing that those receivers have in common is not necessarily quality of offense. It's not necessarily the amount of touchdowns. It's not even necessarily the amount of yards or catches or targets. What they all have in common is that they all play a lot in the slot, getting those mismatches week in and week out. CeeDee Lamb plays more in the slot than any other of the elite receivers in that tier, and the targets should keep going there. So, Chase, I do like it from that standpoint. So after that, Amber, she went with Breece Hall. I like that pick. And then we get the Nick, who goes with Tyreek Hill at the 105.
Yeah, that's value right there for me. Tyreek Hill, back-to-back years of at least 1,700 yards receiving. We're talking about a guy that gets constantly motioned around the offense. He's going to get the easy layup targets, but also, obviously, he uses speed to get down deep. So, I mean, that's just a value there at 5, even in a half-point PPR setting. So get a monster receiver, and we'll see how the rest of the roster stacks up.
All right. I can't argue with it. Look, if Tua can just play, half of himself in November, Tyreek Hill will be fine. We've already seen that in years past. He's like the only player that it doesn't affect when the weather changes. The only one, as long as he's healthy. He's talking about at 30, how he's healthier than ever. He's changed his diet. He's changed his workout regimen. I'm looking for big things out of Tyreek Hill. I do have him ranked 1 spot of Justin Jefferson. I even have him 1 spot ranked ahead of Jamar Chase right now because the contract situation he's going with, and he can't ramp up in camp. So I like that too. After that, we have to go to me because we had 3 computer picks. So I'm debating right now between Jonathan Taylor and AJ Brown, and I am going to go with Jonathan Taylor. Next week, we're going to have a draft show where we go, where we talk about our perfect draft challenge. All right, we're gonna start as if we're picking somewhere between 7 and 9 in the draft, and we're gonna go through our tiers on this show, and we're gonna break it all down for you guys. And I can't wait for that episode again. That's next week at 9:30, right here on the FFAN Advice Network on YouTube, and of course on Operation Domination on our podcast apps. But what we're gonna be going through here is tiers. And Jonathan Taylor is the last player in my elite running back tier, where I do have A.J. Brown and Garrett Wilson kind of lumped together in that tier right below the elite wide receiver. So that's why I go ahead and go with Jonathan Taylor. Shout out to you, Adam, for that. All right, so let's go to Johnny. He goes with Saquon Barkley, who would have been my next pick. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, man, I think Saquon, I am all the way in on Saquon this year. It's something I've been talking about. You put him behind a better offensive line than he's ever seen in his entire career. He was RB12, I believe, last year, like in this format. A lot of people are scared of him, thinking that Jalen Hurts may, take some touchdowns away from him. I'm not. I think this is a perfect situation for him. I think this kind of reminds me of when CMC got traded to the 49ers. You got a dynamic talent behind a really solid offensive line and a lot of skill players. So I'm taking him all day long right there.
Yeah, we're not worried about push-tush. I bring this up every chance I get. Miles Sanders had 13 rushing touchdowns in 2022. Jalen Hurts, exactly. Miles Sanders, of all people, and yet Jalen Hurts was getting pushed to his touchdowns. Okay, it's not an issue. Will Saquon Barkley likely have the least amount of targets per game in his career? Yes. Jalen Hurts does not have the instinct to just dump the ball down. Now, what they do have as a caveat, that Kellen Moore, he does like to call up screens. He does like to get the running back involved. So hopefully that'll be a little bit more of a balancing act, and the Saquon Barkley won't get quite, DeAndre Swift from last year. We only had like 49 targets as a receiving running back, but those are the things that we're looking at. So I love the Saquon Barkley pick. We're still waiting for Chef Dunna. Maybe they're not in here. I don't know. Hopefully they go to auto draft after this. We're waiting for them to make a pick. You got 1 minute before I just go ahead and hit the automatic auto draft, but here we go. Is it tush push or push tush? That is the question. I think it is tush push. I think I constantly make the mistake of saying push tush. I don't know why. I just like the dyslexia in my mind.
That's all right. It's cute.
Or the brotherly shove.
It's endearing.
Brotherly shove.
Brotherly shove. I like that one. I like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I hate the brotherly. I hate Philadelphia fans. No offense to Philadelphia fans, but every one of you I met, I'm not a big fan of. So it's saying the brotherly shove. I'm not a fan of it. Sorry, I can't like it. Chef Dunna did go Garrett Wilson. That would have been my pick there. So I do like the pick there out of Garrett Wilson. He is like, he's got to get it done this year, right? We need him to get it done. Aaron Rodgers is there. Garrett Wilson looks primed to break out. It is his time. And I don't know who else they're going to throw the ball to. Breece Hall? Like that's it. Like, is it going to be Mike Williams? How long is he going to last? So I don't know. But we do have Chris, who can now, somebody else besides me can talk. He went A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry. Love that back-to-back. Chris, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I went off the board a little bit, Dan. I think I was hoping right there that I was going to have Garrett Wilson, one of my top guys and my top tier receivers. But I settled for A.J. Brown, another guy who I have, right there. A guy who I love potential being able to move around in Kellen Moore's offense. We might be able to see him be utilized in that Keenan Allen role, where we saw Keenan Allen be a target monster, line up in the slot. He's talked about earlier how much that can help a top tier receiver. And then Derrick Henry. Everybody every year sleeps on Derrick Henry. Winds up scoring top four almost every year. But this year, he's actually on a good offense with an incredible quarterback, Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry can have 15, 20 touches, and a guy who can have monster games for me and score double-digit touchdowns easy. I'm going to go with the solid play week in, week out, Derrick Henry.
Yeah, not that. Yep, I love it. Can't argue with it. I think dude, I must have like 20 player props on Derrick Henry right now. I mean, I got over on his yards. I got over on his touchdowns. I got over pretty much on everything. Shout out Monetary Mode. No Kelsey for the push. Yeah, it's still going to be a top 5 offensive line. I'm really not that worried that they're not going to push. That sounds like a rap. We got to get that going. We're going to push, and the push. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's not gonna matter. We got a top 5 offensive line. They're still gonna push and tush and tush and push Jalen Hurts across the goal line. So I'm not really worried about that. But let's get Johnny. You sniped me, by the way, because you took Drake London, which is not cool.
I love it.
But go ahead, talk about Drake London.
Yeah, man. Kirk Cousins obviously talked about Justin Jefferson a little bit earlier on a lot of that production. Earlier on his career was a part of Kirk Cousins being there.
Oh man, just when he's about to break it down, he disappeared.
Okay, there we go. I'm back. Now you got Kirk Cousins there in that Atlanta offense, right? And obviously the Zach Robinson scheme, Drake London being that number 1 receiver, high talent for sure. And we've seen what he was able to do last year, and just call it what it is, a pretty trash offense, right? So obviously playing inside the dome, that's another piece for me that I think about is hey, there's a lot of games when you think about the NFC South, a lot of games are inside. So I feel great about this pick, and that's somebody that if I have the opportunity to get him, I'm absolutely snagging him every single chance I can get, man.
Yeah, and guys, help me out with this one. I am sick and tired of people talking about, well, Drake London, we are projecting fantasy greatness on him because his ADP is wide receiver 10. It's not like he's not in the top 12 of everybody's receivers, essentially, but we're projecting it on him because he hasn't done it before. And I'm just like, of all the guys to say that about, first of all, Marvin Harrison hasn't even played an NFL game. We have him as a top 12 wide receiver. So talk about projecting, number 1. Number 2, who cares? Garrett Wilson hasn't done it yet. We know why Drake London hasn't done it yet. Yeah. Why does that matter? Anybody have a reason? Anything want to float out there? Or just want to vent the way I want to vent?
I mean, I think like the Garrett Wilson thing, I think that's just, recency bias, right? Like he was somebody that was pegged as a top tier wide receiver last year. And I think, recency bias and obviously having Aaron Rodgers back now, people are just like, all right, hey, like this is a thing. And, people don't trust Mike Williams, but I think, hey, we'll see how it goes. Mike Williams is still an NFL wide receiver. And as far as Marvin Harrison, I think, people look at him and think obviously his father, and then they also think about that Arizona offense and Kyler Murray and the fact that they're going to be having to play catch up quite a bit, or there's going to be a lot of shootouts out there. But Drake London, to your point, I don't know why people are just like not buying in on him. I don't know if it's the Kyle Pitts theory or if there's still recency bias again last year from his production or lack thereof from Atlanta. So that's my take, man.
I think it's back-to-back years getting burned for a lot of people. I think a lot of people were excited about him in his rookie year, had similar to Marvin Harrison. They were all over him. There's a guy we're going to have in our 20s. They draft him, and he's 45 or 55 or something like that his first year. Second year, you draft him and think, okay, it can't be as bad. And then you get receiver 37. So I think that's where you kind of see Dan. Like, I think people want to believe, but they're also like, it's the newest flavor in the week. The Marvin Harrison is more tantalizing than the guy who's burned you twice.
Yeah, this is all I want to keep saying every time I think about Arthur Smith.
Our pets' heads are falling off.
FAS. Forget Arthur Smith. All right, I want to make Bozo Catfish. I got you. You're drafting in the 3 spot. I'm drafting in the 3 spot. We're gonna go this direction.
Hold on.
Honestly,
your turn.
It just was.
We'll get there.
I'm just saying.
It's your turn on the draft board. It's not your turn to talk. I got to talk about my Gibbs pick. We still got to get over it. We're all the way back here.
He's injured. You already talked about him.
No, we mentioned opening up the show. He hurts his ankle. He hurts his hamstring, but there's no reason that he's not going to play week 1. They're going to give him every opportunity to be healed up. And as long as he's healed up, he's explosive. And as long as he's explosive, he's the guy. I mean, we even saw it at the end of last year. He was starting to overtake David Montgomery a little bit. But even if you want to say, hey, Montgomery's not going anywhere, or Montgomery's going to get all the goal line work, which isn't going to be true, by the way, because he nearly made it a 50-50 split point towards the end of the year. But even if you want to say that, Jahmyr Gibbs is still the RB10 in the first 9 weeks of the season before he really ever even got going. So give me that upside. I didn't think I was going to go running back. That wasn't my plan going into the draft, but that's another good example of flowing when your draft flows. All right. I do want to get to Nick because Nick took one of my next favorite picks. He took Deebo Samuel, someone I've been really high on, who I have as a top 12 wide receiver ahead of ECR. So Nick, I want to hear about your Deebo Samuel pick there at 208.
Yeah, it was tough for me because I initially was thinking about Marvin Harrison, but with Deebo in a halfway PPR setting, he becomes more valuable. Obviously, we're talking about Niners offense that's going to be top 5 in points per game. We're talking about a guy in Deebo who is a specialist with getting carries, being used as an all-purpose type of weaponry versus just your average receiver. So in this situation, like I love having him as my wide receiver 2, where we had to start 3 wide receivers. In terms of Deebo, like we all know, shades of hopefully the 2021 legendary season that he had is hopefully there. But even if he isn't, he's wide receiver 2, and I think it's at a decent place in the draft where I'm not reaching for him. He's fell right into my lap.
Yeah, not at all. Tyreek Hill, Deebo Samuel, nice little back-to-back at the wide receivers, doing the antithesis of what I'm doing right now. Amber came back, and now she got Isaiah Pacheco. I like that pick there in the second round. Solid.
It.
Now you can talk about your Marvin Harrison pick, Chase.
I took him mostly because I don't have him yet anywhere. It was between him and Chris Olave for me. And I figured, heck, I'd take a shot on the guy that I don't have a whole hell of a lot of yet. But I do expect him to be the number 1 target on the outside anyway for this offense. I think Trey McBride there is going to get a ton of targets as well. But I think Harrison, based on the fact that he's playing receiver, they're going to have a full season, hopefully, of Kyler Murray. I think that pass offense is going to be something to watch this year with that. I'm excited to see what they can do in Arizona there. So, I'm willing to take a shot on Marvin Harrison. Like I said, it was between him and Olave. Both of them are going to be the number 1 options where they're playing. I just happen to like the quarterback situation a little bit more in Arizona.
I'm not going to hit the breaking news drop for this, but I'm just going to mention it here. The Giants are trading defensive tackle Jordan Phillips to the Dallas Cowboys. You're welcome.
Matthew Judon as well was traded to the Atlanta
Yeah.
Falcons earlier tonight as well.
Now,
Third round pick.
Did they make that official, or
the Judon trade's official.
Okay.
It's the Brandon Ayuk is never going to be official.
Thank you, New England, for doing.
Oh my God, Brandon Ayuk.
We got a play-by-play of him and how he sat next to John Lynch today in practice, and we did for practice where he sat,
I know, wasn't that
he was wearing and everything.
He was intently watching. That means he's going to sign tomorrow. Okay.
In a sleeveless T-shirt, in a sleeveless Niners T-shirt.
He was intently watching the practice, taking notes. All right, so we go to Adam. Adam took this has to be my guy because I've been pumping up Chris Olave all year long. But he goes Chris Olave. Then he comes back with DJ Moore. So I'm going to love to see that little step-by-step there of those two players out of you, Adam.
Yeah, to me, of the guys available outside of, I think Kupp and Neighbors have similar levels of upside, but these to me are guys that absolutely could break into the top 12 wide receivers. There's no question in my mind. I think they've both shown the talent. Both of them ended the season really strong last year. Both of them have been target monsters. Now, DJ Moore has some incoming target monsters around him. There's no question. But I do think that with the quality of quarterback and a quarterback who likes to push the ball down the field, likes to make some plays, and that's something that DJ Moore is all about. I think that's going to be a really good match between those two. And then Olave, I mean, you kind of broke down what we see with some of these top wide receivers and how you really, love those guys who are moving all around the formation, including the slot. And Chris Olave's usage, not necessarily in the routes that he runs, but in, where he lines up in formations and how he gets moved around is very similar to Justin Jefferson, who's been one of the more dominant receivers in the game. He's not quite in the slot as much as CeeDee Lamb, but similar usage, like I said, to Jefferson. So I'm excited for both these guys. They're young receivers, and I'm very much so looking forward to watching this year.
So let me pick your brain a little bit on DJ Moore. Now, you did mention, yes, he has the extra target share, but I think the other part of this is the quarterback. So, yeah, Justin Fields, not a great quarterback. Caleb Williams, year one, will probably be a better quarterback than Justin Fields, but Fields did prove that he was good at locking into his one and only read. With Caleb, not only did he have the ball distribution, but I think we look at C.J. Stroud last year and say he had a hell of an exceptional rookie year, and yet it was still only 23 touchdowns. I mean, when you're looking at Caleb Williams and you're looking at DJ Moore's upside, does it really get there with, let's keep in mind, this isn't Bobby Sloak, this is Shane Waldron calling the plays. Like, what makes you extra confident that he could be a top 12 receiver when it's a rookie quarterback, despite it being the number one pick overall?
I mean, look, I love the gambles in Keenan Allen and Odunze individually. I mean, how I thought Odunze and Harrison were comparable. Like, I literally love Odunze much more than I think the average person in our field does. But look, we're still talking about a rookie and a wide receiver on the wrong end of 30 who has an extensive injury history. So while certainly when both of them are on the field, they're going to take a lot of target shares and it's going to be tough, I do think that this is an offense poised to be very, very strong, like one of the more confident quarterback rookie seasons that I've had in a long time, paired with the other receivers. I think they're going to be very good when they're on the field. But it is still a rookie, and it is still a guy that I would, I'm going to throw it out there. I expect Keenan Allen to miss at least 3 to 4 games this year. Like, I don't think that's crazy. I think he's going to be great when he's on the field. He's going to miss a couple games.
No, that's fair. That's been kind of the pattern there. All right, so then we had Josh Allen, who's the first quarterback off the board early in the third round. That was the computer's pick. And then we get to a real-life person. You can see him right there in the beautiful Operation Domination jersey there. We get the chase, and he goes with Travis Kelce, age be damned by the oldest member on our panel. So why you go with Travis Kelce there?
Well, listen, let it not be said that Chase Thornton has take lock, because you guys all know we argued about this earlier. In fact, I missed an episode where you guys kind of ripped me apart for it, but I had Laporta actually as my number one in the preseason. But once I got done with all my projections for the year and I took a second look at things, listen, Mr. Swift is still the number one tight end in fantasy football, and I think he's going to be for another year or two at least. I love Sam Laporta, love everything about him, but you just can't argue with the guy that's the king and continues to be the king and appears to have found his queen as well. So, yeah, no, I'm all about Travis Kelce, and I like having that advantage walking in the door every week with Kelce at the top of the tight end rankings.
Is he going to get that hyphenated? Is that going to be legit? Is it going to be Swift then Kelsey? You think? Travis Swift Kelsey? He's going to put her name first and his name second?
I would. She rules the planet right now. Why wouldn't you? There's no shame in that, in my opinion. Go for it, dude. Get what you can do.
I totally agree with you. Travis Kelce is my number one tight end overall. I don't know if I'm taking a tight end that's not in a premium tight end league in the third round period. That's the only thing I'm still trying to figure out right now, because there is more tight ends to be had this year, at least on paper, than there had been in previous seasons. But if you are going to go in the third round for tight end, you're picking at the 303. It's not like he's going to be there when by the time he comes back to you in the fourth round. I'm not going to sit there and argue with it. And I'm going to point this out with Travis Kelce. He was tied with Sam Laporta on a points per game basis to be the tight end one, and yet the guy was banged up heading into week one, missed week one. In fact, as a result, never really quite looked healthy. So if you could say his age, I could say it's definitely health. I think you can make the argument for both. After that, Amber went with Jalen Waddle. We get back to Nick. He takes Devon Achane in the third round. So Nick, what do you like about Devon Achane this year?
Look, we just love Miami offense here because when it comes based on game flow and game perspective, do we really expect Miami's defense to be good? And then do we expect that Miami cannot score more points per game because of that? Along with that, Devon Achane, I believe where I got him is no question a great pick there. He usually goes middle of second, sometimes late second, sometimes early second. But he is one of those boomer bust players. 5 times last year in the top 8 in points per game performances. Like, this guy as my RB1 fits with the rest of my squad right now. And I think with Achane, people are in or out because he has that okay floor, great ceiling. And we're talking about the split. Everyone's so worried about Raheem Mostert, Jalen Wright, whatever. I think in terms of when you have a guy like Achane who is very efficient based on touch per game, like 7.8 yards per touch last season. Like, we're not expecting the efficiency perspective, but can the touches per game go up? Absolutely.
I like him in the third round. I do. And look, I am the Devon Achane hater on this show. Adam and Chase, they'll attest to that. But I'm okay with him in the third round. It's more when he gets drafted in the second round is where I have the issue. I still have Raheem Mostert ranked one spot in front of him. Raheem Mostert, with the extension, is still expected to handle more goal line work, probably a touch or two more per game basis. Jalen Wright, maybe he mixes in for 6 to 8 touches at most. That would be the absolute max. But that is enough to where I don't know for sure Devon Achane can go from 12.8 opportunities from last season to, say, 14.8 and get closer to that 15 mark, which is what he needs to be to give back the value, because the ADP value on Devon Achane is a top 10 running back. And that's where I disagree. But in the third round for a big play guy, that's where I'm okay with it at that point. So I'm not gonna bash on you, Nick. You took him at the right spot there. But after that, we saw the computers. We went Nico Collins, Josh Jacobs, Sam Laporta, and then it came to my pick, and I did not walk. I ran to the podium to put Cooper Kupp on there late in the round. Love it. Oh, my goodness. Like, drafting the 2 running backs to kick off the draft paid off because I got Cooper Kupp to land to me. So just so you guys are aware, if you haven't checked out my rankings app, go check them out. I'm all over Fantasy Pros, also on FantasySportsAdviceNetwork.com. If you go there and sign up for a pro membership, you'll be able to see all my articles with my article breakdowns. Cooper Kupp is my wide receiver 13. I have him just outside the top 12. Now, if you actually listen to what's going on in Los Angeles, the beat writers will tell you the offense has been flowing through Cooper Kupp, even when Puka Nacua was on the field previous to his knee injury. Now, Puka is a little bit banged up. I don't think he's going to cost him any time, but Cooper Kupp is here. All the talk has been he's doing everything to get back in the shape. That last year he was more banged up than any of us could even understand. And the one thing I am not going to question is Cooper Kupp's ethic. As long as Matthew Stafford is there, I am taking him. I think he could be a top 12 receiver, and I got him late in the third round. Couldn't be more happy about that. Johnny, you went with Mike Evans right after that pick. Did I snipe you? Tell me I sniped you.
You did. You actually did, because that's exactly where I was looking at. So I think you and I, we got a little thing going on here, man. No, man, Mike Evans for me. I got this thing, man, for me this year. Like one of the things I was really am really focused on this year is just true number one wide receivers and getting true number one wide receivers, right? And Mike Williams, he's that guy. He's number one wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You know what he's going to give you going in there. We all know what he can do from a yardage perspective. He's done it for 8-9 years. And then if you tell me on top of that as well, just from last year, if you're going to tell me I'm going to get a top 5 wide receiver from last year, I'm in the 3rd round. I'll take that all day long with the start that I've got. So I'm excited about having Mike Evans and Drake London as my wide receiver core, and then having Saquon as well. So I got 3 guys who are getting all the work at their position. So I'm loving how my start has started.
Volume. Can't argue with the volume that you're about to get. Love that. All right. So then we had Chef Dunna went with Patrick Mahomes. So that's our second quarterback to come off the board. And now, Chris, you went DK Metcalf, who I have at wide receiver 14, actually. So I think that's a great value. You got him there. And then you came back with Stephon Diggs, which, if I'm looking, is the second of the Texan receivers that have come off the board. I don't believe Tank Dell's come off the board yet. So walk me through DK Metcalf and why Stephon over Tank Dell.
Well, first, DK Metcalf, I think, people talk a lot about what we've gotten in the past few years. I know there's some disappointment that we haven't quite seen the elite ceiling of, DK. But one of the things I'm excited about is the change in offense of Ryan Grubb taking over as offensive coordinator. I got through 65% of the time he threw in Washington last year. And by the way, Roman Doomsday was the leading receiver in the NCAA last year. So I think you look at a guy who can, be featured in a lot of different weapons. We saw that, like I said, in Washington. We saw 3 different receivers go 1,000 yards. We've seen this situation where I think DK is the guy that can be the alpha in this receiving core, and there's a lot of reports about him being moved around in formations. If he could just add at least one more route, DK Metcalf is one guy that can easily become the next Mike Evans and a guy who can be a stalwart. And then moving forward, Stephon Diggs. Look, I know everybody just wants to crap on him because of how things ended in Buffalo. Also, to remind everybody, last year he wound up finishing receiver 10 and half-point PPR. And the previous year, he also kind of stunk it up for the last 3 or 4 weeks. So it's not something where he lost a step or he's done or he's injured. There's something with going Buffalo's offense where come wintertime, it kind of struggles a little bit. It has the last 3 years, actually. So Stephon Diggs, to me, is the guy that's madly underrated. People just want to assume that he's going to be done because he's going to be with Nico Collins, who, going into last year, nobody cared about. Tank Dell, I love his receiving upside, but still not the alpha receiver, I think, in this prop. And then add Stephon Diggs' lineup a lot in the slot. Talk about the slot receiver, how they get featured in these offenses. Loving the upside of Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, and I think that was the biggest revelation from the Houston Texans games, right? It was Stephon Diggs in the slot, not Tank Dell, not Nico Collins. So he does get those extra mismatches. So I like that you brought that up and point that out. After that was James Cook from Jeff Dunna, and then we get to Johnny, and he goes, Mark Andrews. You finally didn't snipe me this time. I appreciate it. You didn't snipe me this time. Thank you.
I can tell you, Malik Neighbors, he was somebody I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Malik Neighbors was somebody I was thinking about, though, for sure. So we're on the same page. But again, man, just to continue to echo, man, my theme, man, like I'm looking at guys that are gonna get volume, and this is obviously Mark Andrews is somebody who could give me some positional advantage in terms of potentially being, one of the top 2, top 3 tight ends in fantasy football. And I think obviously with Derrick Henry being there now as well, like that's going to open up some things for him as well. And he didn't have a chance to play down the stretch. And then obviously with Isaiah Likely, like there's been reports about how they're going to use him. So obviously the tight end is going to be featured in this offense for sure. So again, just an opportunity for more volume and a little bit more positional advantage for me with Mandrews.
As long as he stays healthy, he's been a top 3 tight end. I mean, that's just plain and simple. As long as he's healthy, his floor is top 3 tight end. Now, I do have him ranked at 4 this year. That's a reflection of the last few years being a little bit rough, but as long as he gets it together, he's going to be just fine. He'll be right up there with the bunch. I did go Malik Neighbors, and Adam, this is for you. I was struggling, in fact, between Malik Neighbors and Michael Pittman. Like, I really was. Technically speaking, I have Pittman ranked 2 spots ahead of Malik Neighbors. The reason I went with Neighbors was because I already grabbed Cooper Kupp, and I figured I want my wide receiver 2 to have a little bit more upside, because with Pittman, we know know we're going to get. We know we're going to get 100 receptions. We know we're going to get 1,000 yards, but we're probably only going to get maybe 4, if we're lucky, 5 touchdowns. So I'm going to take somebody who's a monster, yards after the catch, who's in line because of how bad the offense is around him to get the same type of volume as a Michael Pittman. So I decided, because I already had Cooper Kupp, I was going to go Neighbors. Otherwise, if I didn't have Kupp already, I might have went Pittman there. That was kind of my line of thinking on that one. What do you think, Adam? We've done the same thing?
I would not have, but I do have them very closely ranking, and I can see the reasoning, especially having already taken Taylor. I may have been persuaded to go Neighbors. I do similarly have Pittman higher, but it's by like 2 or 3 spots, same tier. So I certainly have no qualms. I love Neighbors this year.
You better say no, Michael Pittman being your boy. Better say your thing. All right, so after that, we did see Pittman go to the next pick, and then we saw Jalen Hurts go to the computer, Joe Mixon, and then Nick's on the clock. We'll let Nick make his pick in just a second. Chase, how you feeling about your top 3? You don't have a running back yet. So what's your game plan here going into this? Are you pushing to get a running back, or you're like, you know what? I can still wait a little bit if I want to.
I can still wait a little bit if I want to. I mean, it's a mock. It's the time to try some of those things that you don't normally maybe try. I'm not normally a 0 running back kind of guy. I'm not necessarily planning on 0 running back here. But, if I look at the board and I feel like there's better value to be had elsewhere, or I like who's on the board at a different position, I don't feel like I have to worry about a running back because I've got ideas for later on. So, I'm happy with Lamb and Harrison. Like I said, to echo what Johnny was saying earlier, volume, guys who I know are going to get volume, guys who I know are going to be seeing the football on their teams. And I think I've got the 3 guys who are going to lead their teams in targets this season. So far, I feel pretty good about that. And going up here, I like having an elite tight end. I like having an elite quarterback. So
hold on your process real quick. Make your pick. We'll get back to your process. We got to get back to. I was stalling for Nick because Nick had to make his Devonta Smith pick. So Nick, you will walk me through Devonta Smith at the 408, second receiver of the Philadelphia Eagles. Go.
Yeah, just another value pick. With Devonta Smith, like we typically see good offenses, utilizes their wide receiver 2 at a great rate as well, based on fantasy football. So I like Devonta Smith where he goes, especially here. Eagles offense is going to be turning around. We got Kellen Moore coming in now. I really want any and all pieces of the Eagles offense because we know that Kellen Moore's offenses are going to be more scripted towards throwing the ball of a neutral rate. Last year when he was with the Chargers, Chargers led were 8th in the league when it came to neutral pass rate. The Eagles, obviously, finished the season as a dumpster fire, finished as 26th. So, honestly, we should see the Eagles bounce back, especially in that type of rate. Along with, again, I want all parts of this Eagles offense where I can get them. And Devonta Smith as my wide receiver 3 feels criminal.
Looking awesome in camp, too.
Yeah, Chris, I was literally just about to say that. So Chris and I had a discussion, I think on the way to the Expo, right, Chris? We were talking about this in training camp. And as a 49ers fan, I paid close attention to what the beat writers talking about with the 49ers, especially last season. And last season, all you heard every single day in training camp was how Brandon Ayuk couldn't be covered. His routes were too sharp. Nobody could stay with him. He was shaking everybody off. He looked great every single day. That same type of reporting is now coming out of the Philadelphia Eagle beat writers to the point that the news had Devonta Smith at 24. I'm like, look, I can't ignore this. The vibe is too good. I actually moved him up to my wide receiver 21. I moved him up 3 spots. I may move him up a little bit further. It's getting tight in that tier range. But somebody who is the second receiver on the team who has fallen behind A.J. Brown in target share each of the last 2 seasons, I'm like, you know what? We might see a little breakout of Devonta Smith this year. So I actually moved him up a few spots. Love him as your wide receiver 3 at the 408. Not going to argue that. Amber went with Amari Cooper. Solid now that the Browns won't be trading him to San Francisco. Keep his target share. Now, Chase, now you can walk us through your elite quarterback strategy here at the 4th round.
I like having those guys with the rushing upside there. I'm not worried about Derrick Henry taking anything away from Lamar because Lamar doesn't necessarily run at the goal line anyway. He does most of his damage rushing from a yardage standpoint. The did a little bit of an uptick last year in their passing volume. I like Lamar Jackson to continue to be an elite option at quarterback. And so now I don't have to worry about either of those two positions for a while. I can hammer away on the big two at running back and wide receiver and feel good about the volume and the points that I'm going to be getting at those two positions there.
Yeah, I'd love to see what, again, Bozo Catfish thinks about your draft. We'll have to get him back on. Rashad White goes to the computer, and then Adam LaRue goes with Kenneth Walker and Trey McBride. Talk about it, Adam, because Kenneth Walker is somebody who's also popping up on my radar in training camp.
Yeah, look, I think this is about the time for him to break out. He's a super talented running back. He's someone who sneakily, I think through last season, his vision did look improved. He obviously had, some minor injury issues throughout the year, and some other struggles, but on the whole, I do think that he was, moving in the right direction. The offense as a whole just wasn't, and I really like the offensive coordinator pick here. I think he's an explosive, young, super talented running back who, again, just has the upside to take the next step to outswing the draft status here, and I really feel that way about the guys who I followed up Christian McCaffrey with, and I think ultimately I just want to put myself in the best position to hammer in on the opportunity I got myself with CMC, right? Like I feel like following up that 101 is really important. I like what we've done so far. And then McBride is someone who I think could be challenging for that tight end 1 title, in the next few years. Obviously, Kelsey and Laporta right now feel like the two that are really in that conversation at the current moment. And obviously Kelsey, I think by most people's standards, is the guy. But look, McBride, I think, as far as talent is concerned, is really closing in on at least Laporta. So I'm really excited about him moving forward. The offense certainly has its question marks, but I love the talent. So,
yeah, look, Trey McBride, he should get touchdown regression to the mean, right? Positive touchdown regression with the amount of targets that he was seeing. Even if Marvin Harrison's there's still plenty to go around for Trey McBride. So we're totally on the same page, Eric. The Kenneth Walker thing I wanted to point out. So Zach Charbonnet was somebody we've been battling the last couple of years. Is this a committee? Is Charbonnet just the handcuff? And now we get a new coaching staff, right? But I think what people are not taking enough into consideration is that how good Kenneth Walker, you said his vision improved. What about his pass catching? The guy was second in yards per route run, second in missed tackles forced per route run. The guy was elusive in the field. He's proving that if they throw the ball to him a little bit more, he can handle it. He can put up those metrics with it. And Zach Charbonnet may just be nothing more than a handcuff right now in this offense with Ryan Grubb, who did feature predominantly one guy in Washington University. And I love the Trey McBride pick. I'm going to point this out, and this is something funny. This isn't part of our mock draft. This is going back to the breaking news that we talked about earlier. When I see trades like this, I just shake my head and wonder why. So Giants are sending a 7th-round pick to the Cowboys in exchange for a 6th-round pick and for Jordan Phillips. So 7th rounder equals 6th rounder and Jordan Phillips. Just be like, here's the money. Okay. Here's the money and be done with it. Don't waste my time with this is ridiculous. Anyway, all right. So after that, Tank Dell goes to the computer. Chase comes back. He takes Alvin Kamara. Love the Alvin Kamara value in the 5th round. This is why, and maybe you're going to talk about this, but this is why the running back dead zone, I don't believe exists in this year's draft. But go ahead with Alvin Kamara.
No, like I said, I didn't come into this expecting necessarily 0 RB. I like to take a running back in the 1st round if I'm picking at the right spot there to try and maybe do an anchor RB strategy. But listen, I was able to get my number 1 overall tight end, my number 1 overall receiver, my number 4 overall quarterback, Marvin Harrison, who's in my top 12, and then still come back around with a guy like Alvin Kamara, who we know has RB1 type upside at the 5th round as my RB1. I will take that all day long. I'm fine with what happens to me from here on out at running back. I couldn't be more thrilled that he fell there. I was kind of had my fingers crossed as I waited for the computer to waste their pick on Tank Dell.
You don't.
Get it, Chris.
I was gonna say, Chase, I think you're knocking it out of the ballpark. I feel like you're peeking at my tiers for next week that we're gonna kind of go over and talk about. But I am absolutely loving what you're putting together. And as you talked about, you got 3 guys that I consider elite tier players in CD Lamb, Travis Kelce, Lamar Jackson. Going with 2 guys who've been, one has been Alvin Kamara and Marvin Harrison, the guy who could be.
Yeah, love that, and we love the new system that he's in. Right, he's finally in a system that fits. It's not Pete Carmichael anymore. I mean, everything's just looking up finally for Alvin Kamara. Maybe he's not as efficient. Maybe he has lost a step. Doesn't really matter. Derek Carr, we know, is going to check the ball down 100 million times to his running back. So it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. Amber, you sniped me, Amber. I wanted Donkey K this round. I hate you if you're watching.
Got a girl.
Love it. Get it.
All right. So, Nick, you went with Anthony Richardson here in the 5th round. So, talk about that.
Yeah, I think with Anthony Richardson, talking about a QB who, we have seen a small sample size, right? But with Shane Steichen's offensive pace and play, when it comes to this offense with Anthony Richardson, he can just all he has to do is average quarterback. We love rushing quarterbacks in fantasy. Like, that's why I went with him there. Wasn't in love with a lot of the other options for this format because it's, again, half-point PPR is a little different than full. But to get a guy like Richardson kind of fall in my lap there, I love it. In terms of what he can do, I mean, like I said, I think Shane Steichen, he's had Hurts before. Richardson's not as polished as a passer, but I love the mystery box, and we'll see what happens.
Well,
the mystery box.
I'll say this too. The fact that CJ Stroud went right after your pick makes your pick look even better because CJ Stroud shouldn't be going in the 5th round. I love CJ Stroud. Absolutely love him. And I love the weapons around him. But unless this guy puts up a 40 touchdown season, not saying it's impossible, but unlikely in your 2nd year, I don't see a scenario in which CJ Stroud should be going in the 5th round of a strong quarterback draft class. So with Anthony Richardson, on the other hand, because of his rushing ability, we know he has the possibility to be QB1. So I think that pick actually made your Richardson pick before you look even better. After that, Zay Flowers comes off the board, then James Conner. And then I was super happy. Ramondre Stevenson, my RB13 on the board. Actually, I think I just moved him up to 12 a day or two ago.
Interesting.
Sitting there for me in the end of the 5th round. Love Ramondre Stevenson for a multitude of reasons. So first of all, that is the entire offense of that team is Ramondre Stevenson. They gave him a big contract extension, which tells me Antonio Gibson, this ain't a committee. You are there to be a handcuff and nothing more. Thirdly, I've always loved the fact that Alex Van Pelt was going to be there as the offensive coordinator, the guy who made Nick Chubb, who's of great talent, but make him an elite running back. He had Kareem Hunt, an elite running back. Both of them at the same time, an elite running back. This offense is built to run and built well to be efficient in that area. Oh, and by the way, Ramondre Stevenson catches the ball a hell of a lot. And Jacoby Brissett is used to running this offense. I love Ramondre Stevenson. The volume and the pass catching, people are not looking at him as a bell cow back. I don't understand why. He's younger, less wear and tear than a Joe Mixon, than a Josh Jacobs. I do have Josh Jacobs one spot ahead, but I just moved Stevenson one spot ahead of Joe Mixon for me because of the talent and the role. So that's why I have him at 12 right now. Go ahead, Nick. You want to rebuttal? You can rebuttal.
Oh, sure. I sure will. I think with Stevenson, he just goes a bit too early for me. End of the 5th is okay. I'd rather have him a round later, round and a half later. And it's because
Dan, can you pause the draft because it's not letting me pick my guy?
Sure.
Do we really think like Stevenson is going to be like this difference? No, he's more of a volume play. And for your roster construction, it makes sense. You might want to start him at flex. You may not want to, but he's not your RB2. He's your RB3, so that's fine. I like Stevenson. I just don't like him as far as him being my starter RB2 every week. RB3 flex, that's fine.
You're not alone in that. I mean, his ADP has got him about mid of the 6th round rather than as early as Dan took it. But like Dan said, if he's got him ranked that high, and that's why you don't necessarily go completely by ADP, and that's why you don't necessarily go completely by whatever software you're drafting on's rankings. You got to go by your own feelings of where you're.
Always go by your own tiers.
It still won't be picked, Dan.
Well, you make a great point, Nick. You make a great point. Like, where he's going in the middle of the 6th, apparently a lot of people feel more comfortable with him there, but Dan's happy, so.
Yeah, you guys go ahead, eat your words at the end of the season. That's fine. I have no problem with that.
We'll see.
But here's what I look at in this tier that's left of the running back group, and I wasn't necessarily looking at running backs, I was looking at wide receivers too. But it pretty much would be between him and Raheem Mostert at that point. And I do have Ramondre Stevenson ranked 6 spots ahead of Raheem Mostert, again, mostly due to the bell cow level volume that I believe he's going to see. At the wide receiver position, we're looking at guys like T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin, and then they on sleeper anyway. They have Roma Dunze there. So right there, I can tell you that's a mixture of wide receiver 3s. If I can put a guy who I have ranked as a high-end RB2 in my flex spot, then that's what I want to do every single time, especially in this situation where I have him in my flex spot. Remember, Ramondre Stevenson was somebody we expected to break out last year. Only reason he didn't because he got injured. And in the games in which he was finally warming up after his preseason injury, he was the RB12 until he got injured again with that high ankle sprain and was knocked out again. So he was already on his way to being an RB1 with a worse version than what I believe we're going to see in the Patriot offense this season. So we'll see. We'll come back to that bet at the end of the season. Mark my words. All right, Johnny, you went with George Pickens. Chris, who do you want? Well, first of all, Chris, who is it that you're trying to draft so I can actually put that in here?
Montgomery.
Okay. Go ahead, Johnny. Talk about George Pickens.
Yeah, man. I mean, George Pickens for me.
Oh boy, Homer pick.
Yeah, here we go. Nick knows this is my guy, man. I'm a homer, but this guy's had the worst quarterback play in the NFL for the last 2 years, and you cannot tell me George Pickens is not a talent. On top of that, I know we were talking about Arthur Smith earlier on. Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator, I'm okay with. Arthur Smith, the head coach, not so much. You just go back, you look at what he did for Ryan Tannehill, AJ Brown, that crew right there. So for me anyway, man, to have Pickens as my wide receiver 3 and not reaching and having him at a 2, I'm 100% comfortable with what he's got going on. He's going to get a lot of the targets that were vacated from Deontay Johnson. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk is not going to be going to Pittsburgh here. You know what I mean? So this is this, and he's this is his 3rd year as a wide receiver. You can just tell, we were talking about training camp earlier, the aura is just different with George Pickens. He sounds more mature. He sounds like he's ready to go. He's looking like he's ready to go. He's making all kind of plays in training camp against guys like Joey Porter, who is definitely a really, really good cornerback. So for me, a wide receiver 3, again, a true number 1 wide receiver, still fitting the bill for what it is that I've been looking for all draft long.
You better pray to God.
How many points per game is Pittsburgh going to score?
Too many what?
How many points per game is Pittsburgh going to score, though?
That is a question.
Hey, listen, you know what? This is what I will say to combat that. Last year, but Russell Wilson was able to support Cortland Sutton and Justin Fields. You guys were just talking about what he did with DJ Moore. So either way you look at the situation, in my eyes, both of those quarterbacks are able to support George Pickens and give him the ability to be potentially a wide receiver. I'd say a wide receiver 2 for me, but I know a lot of people think he's more of a wide receiver 3. So it's not about the amount of points that they're going to score. Again, it's about the volume that he's going to get and what he's got going on. He's another volume hog for me, man.
Are you concerned about his route tree? Because that's what also people are saying when it comes to Pickens, is that he's not a complete receiver going into year 3. Does that concern you at all in terms of how he can finish upon being a top 12 receiver? Because I think when it comes down to it, Pickens, your wide receiver 3, I have no problem with that whatsoever. Right. I think it's where you're getting him at, can he finish a top 10 in receivers? I
don't think he's gonna finish as a top 10 wide receiver. No, I'm not that big of a homer.
That's the thing I find that I conflict with, because I don't want a small win. I want to swing for the fences for situations where, all right, that guy wide receiver 3, and Pickens probably can potentially. I think he can, if he's a wide receiver 3, he can potentially finish a top 10 receiver, but it's the likelihood and percentage that he can finish as that. We'll see, but it's more like I like guys I like to take a swing on to see if they'll finish top 8, top 6 from where I'm getting them at.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of guys that like I do like in that same range. I like Christian Kirk like that. I like Terry McLaurin like that. But just for me, yeah, no,
I'm with you. I'm with you on both of those guys.
Yeah, I like both of those guys like in that same ballpark. I like both of those guys in that same ballpark as George.
Even if Christian Kirk is just wide receiver 3 playing the slot most times. You guys still
again, like for my build, wide receiver 3, man, like I'm all in on that all day long. Like there's a lot of things that happened last year that didn't fall in Christian Kirk's favor. And we've seen what it looks like with him and T-Law on the field together. So, I mean, like, we're at the point now, man, where, like, you can make an argument. A lot of these guys, they all got warts, if you look at them. But they all got warts, man. So, like I said, like, for me, just in this format here, just, hey, man, I got a chance to take my guy, and I'm taking my guy GP.
Shout out to Grindberg joining the chat there. All I'll say is this, you better hope to God they don't trade for Brandon Ayuk, because otherwise this is going down in a form.
Yeah, that tanks the stock quickly.
We have breaking news.
Exactly.
Oh my God, I'm gonna love everybody when this year is over with and George Pickens does his thing, man. I'm gonna love it.
I hope Justin Fields is starting quarterback, because if it's Russell Wilson, I don't know if George Pickens gets to eat. If it's Justin Fields, I'll believe a little bit more that he gets to eat. All right, but other than that, so we go back. Chris had 2 picks on the board while he was struggling. He had David Montgomery, came back to back with George Kittle there. So walk me through that, Chris.
Yeah, David Montgomery is that guy that I feel like is a glue piece on your team, the guy that's guaranteed to get you double-digit touchdowns, the guy who's going to be involved in one of the higher scoring offenses in Detroit. And if anything happens to Gibbs, you also can easily be that bell cow back. And I like him as my receiver 2, running back 2 option. And I follow back up with Kittle, who's one of my tight end 3. I know people are down George Kittle, but I last year had over 1,000 yards. The year before I had 10 touchdowns. Usually, if you have those kinds of numbers, you can be one of the top tight end options. And for me, one of the guys I can swing for the fences. There's some other guys I wanted to get greedy with there, Dan, but I wanted to make sure that I locked down our RB2 in my tight end position.
Just to give you guys a heads up, this is going to be the last round that we're going to talk about, because we're up at an hour here. So finish your picks, and then we'll talk about what we have so far. I know. Johnny, he went to Raheem Mostert, which is, who I was debating with Ramondre Stevenson around earlier. He falls to you there. I think it's a good makeup pick for your George Pickens pick.
Talk about it. No, like James Conner, Ramondre Stevenson, like that's where I wanted to go, where Pickens was at. Like I love that area of running backs for sure. And Raheem Mostert, again, you talk about a guy, obviously, hey, last year is last year, but you talk about a guy who finishes top 5, a top 5 running back in round 6. And hey, like again, Nick already talked about it with the Dolphins. Like if we think this team is going to be scoring points, which they're going to be, and their defense is not very good, hey, when they get down around the goal line, Raheem Mostert is going to be that guy. Obviously he's a little bit longer in the tooth, but he doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on him. So for me to be able to get him here in this situation as my RB2 after the board got a little bit slim, the only other guy I was actually thinking about might have been Zamir White, just again to fit the scheme that like I have with my team, just volume. But I decided to go for some more upside here and go for a guy that could maybe hit double-digit touchdowns in the rushing game.
Yep, love the value there. So my next pick is a great example of something, guys, Adam, Chase, Chris, and I, we're going to get into next week. A great example we're going to get into next week. Because Kyle Pitts, who I take here in the 6th round, I would rather take Kyle Pitts in the 7th round. But why do I take him here in the 6th round? Because there was a tier drop. Chris kind of forced my hand a little bit. He takes George Kittle. Evan Ingram comes off the board right after him. So if you want to get in that last top-end tight end that I have in that tier, that top 7 tier, I had to go ahead and take Kyle Pitts here. When I probably, and since this is going to be the last round, I'll actually give the pick away. I was going to probably try to go Terry McLaurin. That's really what I wanted to do. My plan of why I took Ramondre Stevenson when I did is because I thought there was a better chance that McLaurin would be there than Stevenson in the following round. That was my plan. And then the tight ends went off the board. So I followed my tier and said, hey, you know what? I don't want to get snaked at that drop off at tight end when I'm looking at wide receivers who are available. And you have guys like, at that time, T. Higgins was still available. Rashee Rice still available, along with, Terry McLaurin at that point, who I have kind of grouped around that same area. So that's a great example here why I went Kyle Pitts in this situation when I maybe wanted to lean a little bit more towards a wide receiver and wait another round. So that's my line of thinking there. And T. Higgins, Terry McLaurin, in fact, went the next 2 picks to the computer. Then Aaron Jones. We get back to Nick, and he goes with Najee Harris.
Yeah, Najee Harris for me, like, it's Pittsburgh. They're going to run the ball. They're going to stop the run. They're an old school team. But in terms of Najee Harris, last year of his contract, he has the last opportunity to wow us. I think where he's going right now is I need an RB. And I think from a volume perspective, him and Jalen Warren is going to split. But as far as Najee Harris goes, he is the goal line back. He will get the first and second down carries. And I think in terms of that's a little bit more valuable in this format versus if it's full point PPR, I'm more on Jalen Warren. But I definitely like Najee Harris as RB2 here.
I got my RB22, I believe, off the top of my head. Look, I'm not as big on Jalen Warren as everybody else is. You can give me all the metrics. Jalen Warren is Tony Pollard to Zeke the way, that's exactly what it is.
Yes, sir.
The same exact situation. He remains efficient. He is a good running back, but he needs to have less of the opportunities to do what it is he does. I look at Arthur Smith, and I watch this man with Derrick Henry, who's a beast, and you can't argue with it, get all the red zone work. Then I watched him draft Bijan Robinson, and who did he give the majority of the red zone work to? The bigger running back. Now it's not even a question, right? Because he went with a Tyler Algier. Now it's not even a question who the goal line back should be. It should be Najee Harris. What's the talk in Pittsburgh been? Johnny, you talked about the talk in Pittsburgh about George Pickens. What's been the overall talk? It's been how the offensive line has been bully ball, right? That's all.
Yep.
Bully ball, bully ball, bully ball. That's going to be the identity of this team. That gets hammered by Harris. So I actually like Harris a lot. By the way, and I was trying to get through this draft, so maybe you mentioned this, I don't know, but the second half of the season, was an RB1 second half of the season last year, guys. Like everyone's poo-pooing on. He was RB9. He was RB9 second half of the year.
And there were some advanced stats too for him, man. Like as far as like 15-yard runs, I think he was like the league leader, like in that area, as well. And I think too, like, man, to your point, man, people forget like Najee's got soft hands. Like he's got soft hands, so he's relevant in the passing game as well. To your point, where Jalen Warren has got to have Najee to do what he does. Najee can do not all the things, but he can rip off explosive runs, obviously, with those metrics, and then he can obviously pass protect. And he's a guy, bottom line, that like Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers love. And I think there was somebody at the expo, I can't even remember who it was, we were talking about, that's like, outside of Derrick Henry, or even with him, like you can make an argument that Najee Harris might have been like the most complete back at Alabama when you go back and think about it. And I was like, okay, like it's a little bit wow. But like I agree 1,000,000% with what you're saying about Najee and how this could be Najee time again in Pittsburgh, man.
Yeah, love it. So Amber came back. She went with Kyler Murray. Chase, we get to you. You get Christian Kirk, another guy who I think gets forgotten about for no good reason at all.
Love it. Love the volume he's going to get. He's my wide receiver 20, and I got him as my wide receiver 3. I like that. I'll take that all day long. I'm psyched with where this is going until I got sniped there by LaRue on the turn.
Jaden Reed did go, and then LaRue goes Zamir White.
Ugh.
Yeah, he's someone who, I'm not necessarily all that concerned about the lack of, his pass catching chops in this specific offense, just given that I don't know how much that's going to matter in this specific offense. I think receiving threats who aren't named Devontae Adams aren't really going to be relevant in any capacity. Maybe Bowers is able to get there, but I don't think it's going to be anyone but those two that has any real shot. As much as I've talked about it before, I love Jacoby Myers as a talent. I just don't think the offense can support it. But I do think that this is an old school identity type of team that really will want to pound the football. I think physicality is something that is very important to Antonio Pierce. And I think Zamir White, he's not some special back. He's far from it. However, he's a solid back. I think he, offers things, he's an okay pass protector, not great, but he can do it. He can run hard. He can run in a straight line. He can make his one cut and he can go. He's got, he can run away from people once he gets past them. He doesn't have a special burst, but all in all, I think you feel pretty good about him. He looked really strong at the end of the season, even outside of the blowout Chargers game that we're all immediately pops into mind when we talk about Zamir White last year. He looked good in the other games at the end of the season as well. Not to that level. That's why that game comes up, but looked solid. So I like him here based on the volume. Admittedly, Kyler was the guy I was really hoping for here at the end of the round. Had early, but today that happened.
And
There's always one. All right. So here's what I want. I want Nick and Johnny to talk about what they got coming up, where people should follow them. While they're doing that, I want everybody to think about who's their favorite team, not their own. Who's their favorite team, real quick, and we'll close out the show with that. But first, Nick, Johnny, talk about what you guys got coming up and where to follow you guys.
yeah, man, you can catch me, man, right on Twitter, man, at JONYMAINE 37185. I'll throw up a couple shorts, man, for you guys, man, just to let you guys know how I'm feeling about some players. I threw up a couple earlier on in the year. Nick and I, we got some things planned for a little bit later on for the two of us. But yeah, man, definitely give us a follow if you're watching out there, man. Looking to cut our teeth in this thing, man, and keep you guys entertained while kicking some good game as well, man. So be thinking about like what this looks like for you guys during the year. We're gonna be talking a little DFS, gonna be talking a little pick'em, obviously be talking a little season long waiver wires as well.
Yeah, you catch me at Nick_Wilcox25. Me and my guy John, we're gonna be doing exactly that. Give you guys latest and greatest when it comes to season long waiver wire trade advice. You guys got DFS. We're gonna look to cover those things in particular, and just shoot us out. If you got a question, hit my DM box. Let's go and let's get it.
Yeah.
Love it. All right, so Chris, we'll start with you. Chris, who's your favorite team, not your own, in this mock draft that we only got to 6 rounds on?
Yeah, I think I let the cat out of the bag with Chase. I mean, Chase has a lot of players. I think he's putting a nice core together. I'm usually a sucker for when you have balance on your team. I love the tight end position. I love the quarterback and the receivers. I like the Kamara pick. So he's putting together a lot of things. Christian Kirk might be a little bit early for me, but I do like Christian Kirk's value overall. So I think Chase is the guy I'm going to go with.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
Actually, I like what Adam did. Out of the number one slot there, taking McCaffrey overall, I think he made the right choice. I like who he got there for his receivers in terms of volume grabbers at the turn there. Kenneth Walker, I agree with what everybody else said. Trey McBride is a top 3 tight end, and I already said he sniped me on White. I really like what Adam did there in terms of taking the value that fell to him, but also, putting together a roster that across the board is strong.
All right, Adam, who do you got?
I was actually in between the two guys who preceded me here. I'm ultimately leaning towards Chris. The reason being is that with Zamir White now off the board, I am really terrified of the running back options left for you there today. But I do love the other picks that you made. And if Zamir White, turned and we saw the 7 and, you were able to get him there, I think that would have been my pick. It's just yikes the rest of the way down for me personally. So ultimately, Chris edges out Chase for me.
All right. For me, it is Chris as well, mostly because you go A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry, DK Metcalf. Those are 3 players. A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry, who I have in the top 12 of their position. DK Metcalf, I have him 2 spots just knocking on the door. What solidifies is that you come back with David Montgomery, who's on the top 20 running back, and then George Kittle in the 6th round for good value with a tight end. So it was Chris for me, too. Let's go to Johnny. Johnny, who did you like best?
Man, I'm gonna have to go with Chris actually too. Like I like that as well. DK, somebody that is like absolutely, I feel like is gonna blow up this year. AJ Brown is somebody every year who's on the back end that could be like right towards the beginning of the first round. And Steph Diggs he's gonna blow it up, man. And obviously Derrick Henry in that run game. I like it, man. And Kittle, Montgomery, definitely dirty work back there on the back end, baby.
Like it. All right, Nick, who you got?
I like Team 7.
You pick a computer?
This guy.
And I'll give my reasoning for it. So I like the 4 receiver set. I mean, you got Chase, you got Adams, you got Flowers, you got McLaurin. Oh, Chris, I did like your draft. I just want to be a little different. In terms of you got those 4 receivers, and then you got Jalen Hurts, and then you got Jacobs. Like I think Jacobs, where you're getting him, like he doesn't have to be like a top 5 running back. He just has to bring enough to the table, and I think he can with all the opportunities in Green Bay. Along with that, and then obviously Jalen Hurts. Like Jalen Hurts, where you got him, is stupid value. So he goes after Allen and after Mahomes, which is ridiculous. But that's my statement for that. I do like, obviously, Chris's team, like great receivers. Henry, along with Montgomery for this format, makes a ton of sense as long as Montgomery gets those goal line touchdowns.
Yeah, it would all pan out at that point. So, Chris, you get the little win there for our mock draft in the 6th round. Obviously, we had more to come, but that's all we have time for today. Next week, we're going to have our perfect draft strategy. So it's going to be all of us putting all of our rankings and our tiers on display. We're going to be drafting as if we have the 7th through 9th pick in the 1st round, snaking through that. We're going to go through it. 2 of us for each pick are going to nominate. 1 of us is going to make a selection, and we're going to kind of walk through our tiers in the process. So make sure you check that out. Again, it'll be at 9:30 next Wednesday at FF Advice Network on YouTube. Make sure you check us out, Operation Domination Football, on your favorite podcast app. You can follow me at Dan Mayer FF. You follow Chase. You can follow Adam. Chris, Chris is the old guy. Chris doesn't believe in social media. I don't know what it is, but we'll bring him along. He's just our smart guy. We'll bring him along slowly from the dark ages one day. Johnny, Nick, I want to thank you guys so much for coming on. An absolute blast drafting with you guys. Everybody make sure you go ahead and check them out. And in the meantime, everyone enjoy the weekend. Preseason week 2, baby. We'll see you. Hey there, I want to thank you for watching Operation Domination today. And if you're enjoying the show, there are some ways you can help support us. You can go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination and leave us a 5-star review. And you can do this on any podcast platform or on our YouTube page when you go to @FF Advice Network. This completely helps out the show be able to grow, and also leave us comments to let us know how we can curtail the show to you, because you are the most important member of the show. So again, go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination to leave a 5-star review and leave a comment wherever you listen or watch the show, and we'll help better serve you.